9 News.
35 days, that's how long is left before the 2024 general election. And among the candidates on your ballot, there's something you're going to want to pay attention to. Measure 118. It comes with a lofty promise to give every Oregonian roughly $1,600 each year. But nothing comes without a cost, and people from across the aisle and beyond have pushed back against 118, and hard. In your voice, your vote tonight, if Measure 118 passes, it would increase the corporate minimum tax by 3% on the total sales in Oregon. Not their net profit, but their sales above $25 million. That money would then come back to us either as a check or maybe a tax credit, estimated around $1,600 per person. Now, this would fall on a relatively small number of companies, about 2,223 corporations out of the more than 120,000 in the state total. But lawmakers across the political spectrum have rejected this measure for a number of reasons. We'll get to what they have to say in just a moment, but let's first talk about Antonio Gisbert, the petitioner who brought the measure to the ballot. He says giant corporations aren't paying their fair share in taxes, and many agree. But it's that idea and a struggling middle class together that fueled Measure 118.
We also noticed that we as working class folks were finding it ever harder to make ends meet. And we talk about that now being a problem after all this greedflation that we've just gone through and the pandemic. But really, we started working on this in 2018, 2019. And so we thought, what if we put these two concerns together? What if we have giant corporations start to pay their fair share in taxes, and then use that money to give people a rebate so they can use that money as they choose.
Now, that might sound appealing, and you might be inclined to agree with it, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Why are so many officials and groups concerned about what this new tax is going to do? Oregon Governor Tina Kotek told the Willamette Week, quote, "It may look good on paper, but it's flawed, and it would punch a huge hole in the state budget and put essential services for low-wage and working families at risk." Both Oregon Republicans and Democrats released statements in opposition to 118 too. There were a lot of words on both sides, of course, but the general sentiment was that this is bad for Oregonians and Oregon business. Some organizations that are typically for higher taxes for the wealthy and corporations have come out in opposition as well. Now, the Revenue Office did an analysis on Measure 118. They say the increase in those tax collections would be less than what it would cost to fund the rebates and the rebate program, complicate the already existing kicker, which funds schools, and negatively impact the general and rainy day funds. What you probably care about the most would be the impact on inflation. Officials estimate the new tax would bring about a 1.3% increase throughout the state. Here's what one lobbyist says how it would play out.
You could have a company, let's say a landowner that harvests a tree, and they could have to pay this tax when they sell that lumber or that timber to the mill. The mill might have to pay the tax when they sell a 2x4 to a wholesaler, who would have to pay the tax when they sell it to a retailer, who would have to pay the tax when they sell it to the consumer who just wants to, I don't know, fix a patio or something.
The chief petitioner says he disagrees with all of that and that large corporations are paying hardly anything compared to small local businesses. And there are still other questions about how a rebate like the one proposed in Measure 118 would be taxed and how it could potentially impact people's benefits. Gisbert says they have a plan to work on these issues while things get up and running. Regardless, it's up to you now to vote one way or the other in November. And if you aren't registered, that October 15th deadline is rapidly approaching.